Now
So,
you. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah. No, you go ahead.
I don't know how much you want to get into this, but you've mentioned it, and I was probably going to bring it up anyway, because you said you're comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, sure.
You wanted GamerGate to end after SPJ Airplay.
Not that I wanted it to end. What I just saw that the trend that was going on was that a bunch of people who were the original people who went into GamerGate for the right reasons were leaving because they figured there was nothing left that they could do or contribute positively, and they wanted to get on with their lives, and that's understandable. And for myself, like, okay, I can understand that people want to leave. But at the same time, I saw an influx of people coming in that were more of the grifter types, or they were far right, or they were something that didn't look like they were at all the original GamerGate people. And in many ways, like they are a perfect parody of everything that everything that anti-GamerGate accused them to be. I don't know how many of them were false flags either.
Well, you're talking about a very specific community, I believe.
Possibly, but I did see. But the thing is, it could have been that at the very beginning, I didn't see them because well, one thing that just people should know, at least in context, is that one reason why Gamergate exploded was because of something called what was it called? It was a Operation.
Disrespectful nod.
No, it wasn't disrespectful. Not. It was the one where Skynet. It's called Op Skynet. Do you know? Do you know that one?
Everybody on Twitter should follow each other, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, everyone on Twitter should follow each other, especially if you're talking about Gamergate. And what happened was that, and Twitter did not expect this, because we created a super dense network of people who followed each other, which made it very easy to find information and trend anything we ever wanted on Twitter. Because the algorithm did not account for the fact that there would be a whole bunch of people who super followed each other, and there were tens of thousands of accounts who did so. So one of the things, like, I saw pretty much pretty much the entire network with most people on it because I was one of the bigger accounts, and I mass followed everyone else. And so what that led to was that, at least at the very beginning, I saw the kinds of people and tweets that people would make, and as time went on, I began to see the change as people were leaving and more people coming in. More of the types of people that it was attracting tended to be more far right, like ridiculously far right, that I would think that they were parody accounts. And I didn't. And at that point, around the end of SPJ Airplay, I started seeing an influx of more of them coming in because they and trying to be hangers on to the hashtag. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, if that's going to happen, I can imagine people starting to say some ridiculous stuff and claim to be Gamergate when they're really not. They're just there to cause trouble and or to quote unquote hijack the entire network. And so my suggestion was, and to many people who agreed, was simply to say, hey, we're done. We've accomplished our whole thing with this, and we're going to move on to do our own thing, whether it be on talking about the social justice angle of it, or or the destruction of old IPs that we don't like, or whatever else you want to go into, because no one really would agree on the politics of that. Some people were more liberal, some people were more conservative. So there really wasn't a really good way of going forward at that point.
So,
And my suggestion was simply end the hashtag, quote unquote, and just say that everyone who was involved at the very beginning is kind of gone now. Make it official.
now, there's many directions we can go with this. The far right people, I'm sure people have read. We talked about this yesterday. The This was back when GG Revolt sort of became a thing, where these people broke off from Gamergate and sort of made their own movement and went after people
No,
like you
that
as
was
well.
much earlier. GG Revolt was much earlier in the year. GG Revolt was more like
Well, the forum
uh,
started then, but the forum started. Well, it started like right before SPJ Airplay, essentially.
yeah, it was because, and part of the reason was because there tended to be a bit of a groupthink circling Gamergate, both in the in the 8chan at that time. People don't know about that one, but it was called 8chan, and there was also KIA, Kotaku in Action, where there tended to be some groupthink there, and what they were doing was they were actually, and this is where I kind of appreciate them, is that they were a dissenting voice, mostly in the sense that they were concerned about that the mods in both places tended to only favor certain discussions, especially when it came to social justice and avoiding social justice talking points. to their credit, and to somewhat I agree with them, is that there is an angle of social justice to GamerGate, but at the same time, I did not think that it could possibly be addressed because the hashtag itself was not really consolidated around that issue, and there was great divisions among the people there. But they were severely trying to push it rightward, and I didn't think that would work. Even though I politically align more right, I did not think that it would actually work in terms of the gamer hashtag. It just didn't work. And so basically, I went around talking to people, saying, "Hey, what do you think about the idea of ending the hashtag?" A whole bunch of people said yes. The people who said no, and the people who really ultimately basically stopped me from trying to do this thing, were people who stood most to have financial gain from keeping GamerGate alive and using it as a sense for whatever. I mean, you could argue grift that they were doing. They needed it to be politically alive. So that's the people who ended up saying no ultimately to it. And there were some people who actually went around and what do you call it? Falsely framed what I was trying to do. And oddly enough, and kind of ironically enough, considering his history over the last few years, the person who captured this the best was Mundane Matt. He actually captured the actual story pretty well when he covered it way back when. But since then, Matt's gone off on his own thing.
Now, some of the people disagreed with you about this notion.
Yeah, a lot of people did. I mean,
And
strongly, very strongly.
And most of the communication, I believe, on this, if not all, correct me if I'm wrong, was through DMs essentially. You reaching out to people privately and
A
saying,
few of them were DMs, and a few of them were actually talking to them not face to face, but talking to them over whatever's Skype or whatever we were using at the time. I forgot what it was.
but this was not a public conversation, correct?
No, it was first trying to talk to a few individuals to see if there was enough if I thought it was, hey, is this a bad idea or is this a good idea? And talking to individuals on it, and then I was just talking to people who I thought would more. I talked to about a dozen people. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? Before I got stopped.
And there was a specific reason you got stopped by a specific person, and that specific person was me.
Was it you?
It was me.
No, I thought it was actually Ralph who did it.
No.
Because the last
Ralph
person I
wanted the
talked.
hashtag to die. He didn't consider himself Gamergate around that time. If he he wanted Gamergate to end too, but it was me, if you recall. I'm the
Hmm.
one who talked about how there was a conspiracy to end Gamergate from within.
Oh,
I don't think I phrased it that way, but I talked about how some people were talking in private about ending the hashtag and how I thought this was a betrayal of the democratic principles of the movement, essentially, that this shouldn't be done in private, that we should talk about this openly.
yeah.
And if you have an idea to propose, make a video, write an article, that's fine. But this idea where I'm going to get the perception that myself and some people had was that you were going to get a bunch of the big names on board to all sort of declare Gamergate over at one time. That was the perception. I think, did you say that directly?
No, I didn't say. I don't think I said it directly. I wanted to know what everyone's thoughts were, and if we all didn't agree, because I didn't think we would. The person who I actually talked to last, and this is actually just so you know in context, the person I talked to last was Alison Tieman of the Honey Badgers, and Alison said it was a bad idea. And around that time, when she said it was a bad idea, and she gave me her reasoning for it, at the time I agreed with it. I said, okay, well, if that's the case, Allison, if you say no, then there's no reason. And they're one of the biggest. They're one of the biggest part of Gamergate at that point. Uh, there would be no way to really do it. And unfortunately, that's when you started getting involved in talking about it. I didn't get a chance because I never presented it publicly because I was still in the middle of just saying, hey, is this a crazy idea? Maybe you guys can tell me it's a crazy idea. Allison told me it was a crazy idea, and so I said, okay, well, all right. I was going to walk away from it at that point and not even mention it because it was dumb.
Which to
And well,
yeah,
I ended up paying for it, so I didn't mind.
Yes, you paid too high a price, and we're actually really, I think, on good terms now, Paolo. But
Well, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. The high. Okay, you said I paid a high price. Well, here's the price I paid. I had a pretty public probably public, what do you call it? Mental breakdown in front of everyone because I really thought I was going to be. I thought I was in such bad shape. Don't know how long it's going to take me to recover because I didn't expect the blowback to be so bad, nor did I expect how much I would react to it. And so when I realized I was in a really bad space mentally, I ended up streaming saying, "Hey, if I'm not able to get back online, I just want to tell you guys, I really care about all you guys. I know there's like a lot of good guys that are out there that are in this. I felt I didn't know who was really real and who was messing with me. That's how bad felt like I was turned around. But let me put it this way: in the end, it forced me to get away from being online. It told me that I was focused way too much on being on the internet and way too involved with this politically and all sorts of things. It reminded me that I have people that are relying on me and I need to take care of, my family specifically. My eldest son, who saw me go through this breakdown, he and I became really, really good friends, best friends after that, because he knew I needed his help and he was there to help me. I mean, I'll say, like, even though I paid a price for it mentally, the years and months after, the months and years afterwards, man, like, they were really a good period for me to just simply get away from everything, focus on my family, focus on what's really important, the people who are around me in real life. Although I would say there are many important things in the world, such as, hey, we have all this activism we got to do and we got to tell the truth about these things. The most important people are the ones who are in real life around you. And it forced me to do that because I have to say, like, I was a pretty stubborn asshole at that point, and I kept thinking that what I was doing was righteous and good, and being religious and all, like, saying I'm doing God's will and doing what's right, and we're fighting for the truth, and you can tell I really believe that. But at some point, I needed to be humbled and told, hey, your family needs you and you need to walk away from this. And and that's how I took it. I took it as basically a lightning bolt hitting me out of the sky saying, Paulo, you're being a dumbass and I'm going to take you out so that you can focus on who's really important. And if it took you to do it, knocking me completely off my ass because I totally needed it, well, then I'm here to say thank you, because it made me it made me look like I'm a complete total dumbass in front of everyone online. I don't mind that. What mattered is that my family stayed intact. I focused on what was more important. I got my life together and got away from GamerGate just to focus on that. So, you may think that I was a pretty high price to pay, but you know what? Screw the hashtag, screw the hot, screw the damn, we call Twitter account. I don't mind looking like an ass if it means that my family and everything else that matters to me came through in the end. And that's what really matters. So I never, that's why in the end, like, you're on good terms because that's not how I took it. I didn't take it as as you sabotaging me or me taking it that way. No, I took it pretty much as divine retribution for me being an asshole and
yeah,
thinking too big of myself.
well, I'm glad you're open to talking about this. I know we've talked privately about this a couple times.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that my reaction at the time wasn't the best because uh I don't I don't you and I at the time did not really know each other. Like, we were both aware of each other and we maybe talked once or twice, but like we were in like different spheres of GG almost, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And you reached out to me because I was becoming like a more and more of a big figure within the movement with the creative freedom side of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of my stuff you saw, but I think it was clear that I wasn't on the Indit side. And maybe that was you trying to reach out, and maybe you thought you could change my mind on this.
Well, I
But
think you were on the people. I think I might have reached out to you and asking, "Hey, you want to talk about something?" Before I got a chance to talk to you. I think you were on my list because I was getting actually notes from, who was I getting to talk to? It was QQ was one of the people telling me to talk to you.
yeah, and I'm sure QQ. Wait, QQ was on board with the project. Oh, that wasn't he? He was involved in some capacity with your. But wasn't he trying to sabotage you from within?
I don't know. I really don't.
Well, you could never trust anything that Puka said. He
Well, I don't.
He wasn't.
that was the problem. I don't know. I didn't know who to trust. I mean, heck, Nurgle's on this. Was talking. I was talking to Nurgle. I had no idea if Nurgle was in it either. So like, I mean, like, you know how layers and layers and layers of people you've never met. You've only talked to them online. You're not sure if they're really real. You're not sure who's messing with you. It could really begin to mess with your head, and that's why I had to. That's why I ended up breaking down at the very end, because I didn't know who was messing with me. I don't, I won't attribute any malice to what he's doing. He and I got along very well. In fact, I'm the one who called him the Puka. At least as far as I know, I'm the one who called him the Puka the first time. Because he's like, "What's a Puka?" And I said, "Well, a Puka is a trickster." I think I'm the one who told him that. So, I don't know if he really was involved or if he was causing me to actually talk to the people to get you triggered. In either case, like at the end, I'm like, you know what?
Which I
What would
don't.
happen?
Yeah, I don't hold any ill will towards QuQu. In fact, we were on decent terms until we weren't on decent terms. But like no, I have nothing against him. We follow each other on Twitter. But yeah, he always would play everyone against each other and would launch all sorts of psyops. It seemed like if I were to peg him as something, it would probably be as like the kind of person who wants to purposely put you in these sorts of situations to see what kind of person you really are. Sort of like the Joker almost. Where he's not like quite a troll, like he did I think genuinely believe in a lot of the stuff. But he also wanted to make sure that the people he worked with were
Yeah,
genuine. And so he would put you through like stuff like he put you and me through. Where
and you
he
know
would
what?
put us through tests to see if we
Right.
were people of strong moral character, essentially, personal integrity.
He pretty much embodied what the shapeshifter is. I mean, that was his archetype as I saw him on the internet. He was a shapeshifter, and you don't trust shapeshifters only to the extent that you know that they're there to cause trouble. And in either case, I always felt from him that whatever happens through this, no matter what came out of it, I am not ashamed of the person who came out the other end. Because I know at my worst, falling apart and mentally incapable of telling who's real or not, I was still telling people to be good to each other. I was telling people I still cared about them. And I was telling people that they really should talk to one another. Heck, I didn't even know there were federal agents who were on me at that point. And I told them, like, if they were, that I know they're doing their job and they're trying to make sure people are safe. I mean, like, that's the kind of thing I
Federal
felt like.
agents on you?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, you don't know. Like at that point, I was so gaslit. You get the idea, like because I showed my face in like SPJ airplay, like people are starting to tell you, like the feds might be on you, or you might be monitored because you're a right winger, or because you're part of GamerGate. Like you don't know. At the same time, it's in the back of your head. Like, I mean, unfortunately, and this is the unfortunate part, is that we do know people who eventually had those mental breakdowns, who did think federal agents were after them, and who actually did end up hurting their family members. If you could talk for Seattle for Truth, that was one guy who was involved, eventually became anti-Gamergate and hated the hashtag after a while, but he was so gaslit badly that he ended up killing his father.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And like that's the sad truth of like how badly you can get turned around in this thing. I mean, how do I know? And this is something that was a good question. Like we're getting in the way of the media telling narratives, and that their power to cause and move people to move one direction or the other based on whatever lies they want to get to. And we're there questioning their power to their faces. How likely are you under their spotlight? Well, thankfully, in the end, it turned out not really on my part, because I ended up disappearing. So there you go.
yeah. Well, and to be clear, I just for you and for posterity, I'll say that you and I talked maybe like a week or two after this happened. Because you
Yeah.
disappeared off the internet, but you and I got in touch. I don't even know how it was. Maybe we had like a mutual friend or something in GG, which is probably what it was. Um, and I kind of regretted. I still regret, I guess. I don't regret it anymore. I mean, I think it was bad, but like I don't have like I don't have a mental issue with it. Um, I don't think I handled that situation very well. I feel like you came to me, and so you came to me and you're like you want to end privately, and you're like I want to end GamerGate, and you're like I got these other people on board. I think you did mention you had some other people on board, And I think I even got you to provide me with a list of people, um, or at least this partial list,
Yeah,
uh, which that's where the perception was that, hey, wait a second, he's going to get all these big names in Gamergate to all declare it over at one time. That's where, and maybe that wasn't the plan at all. You just floated it by these people. They thought it was a good idea.
sure.
Um,
That's what I did, and then I
yeah.
would start it, and then everyone else would chime in what they thought. But Allison said no, and Allison's a huge part of it. I mean, as much as I disagreed with in the end I ended up disagreeing with a lot of what she was doing. But at the same time, like I figured like she's such a big part of it, and a huge number of people are Honey Badger fans, especially with the men's rights movement type stuff. There's no way it could have happened.
No, I don't think those people were even that really that big.
I mean, I thought they were at least because they the big thing they did, especially I think Calgary Expo, and they
Oh,
lost. And if you remember,
they were large, but they weren't super large. And most of the stuff they did though was within their own podcast and stuff like that. You didn't need those people on board for your plan. You probably needed me though. And I was not on board. And I nuked your plan for Morbid. And even the people who you had agreeing public in private, I think some of those people even kind of stabbed you in the back, which sucks because they didn't want the
yeah,
backlash.
yeah, I didn't mind. I mean, at the same time, like I was willing, as I said to them, and I said to others, I was willing to take the social, what do you call it, social backlash on it. I just didn't expect the level of mental damage it would do.
Yeah.
It's one of
And
those things like, yeah, oh yeah, this will hurt, and you don't realize how much it'll hurt. Like, I'm surprised at how much power social media has, even over perceived slights or perceived negativity. And even though I know that there was a lot of good people who are out there, just the sheer number of people who would negatively say something to you surprised me. And I think that's something that people don't know about social media. And heck, like at the time that happened, I was mid 30s. Like, you'd think that an adult brain would be able to handle it, but no. There are a lot of people who actually go through huge like therapy through this, and I did myself too to make sure I was okay. Like, hey, like social media can have a massive mental backlash, especially if you do something that's negative. And I think that's part of the reason why social media was developed as a tool, in a sense, to move people politically left, in my opinion, towards like certain progressive values. And that's what I believe that it would develop for. And now that Twitter's no longer under the control of Silicon Valley, that's part of the reason why there's so much pushback against it.
but you say do something negative. I don't think you should have to adopt my framing of it.
What do you mean?
Especially since I'm not even sure I adopt my framing of it. Maybe you were right that Gamergate should have ended
I mean,
in
people still
2016.
bring up. Some people bring out the corpse all the time. They say, "Oh, Gamergate was this." I'm like, "Okay, come on, guys." I don't know. I mean, honestly, I just thought I thought I would do what was best and say what I think was the right idea. I just thought people fighting all the time said, you know what? Maybe the reason we're fighting all the time is because of this thing, and we don't all politically agree with like. And I think that forcing quote unquote the hashtag to go one direction or the other, which people were talking about, like let's just say like we're all done, and then that's it. We'll go our separate ways and do whatever, because the big fight especially was like Vivian and Ralph. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe we should do something about it. In either case, like I didn't really blame anyone else for it, and the fact that I myself was too heavily invested into it, and I need to get back to my family, and that's really what mattered. So in either case, I don't hold anything against you, man. And at the same time, like whether or not it needed to be ended or not, that's up for history to decide. And we kind of joke about the fact that people bring out the corpse of Gamergate out every so often just to say, hey, this is these group of terrible people who did this. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, do you really believe there's a bunch of gamers out there who really want to push women out of gaming? You really believe that? And if you really do, I'm like, man, you really don't know gamers at all.
Yeah, it's I felt at the time, at least, that while while SPG Airplay was a great moment, I was never against the project, never against Airplay. Though obviously, would have been better if Milo weren't there. But but he was one person out of 6 people. So
Yeah.
um but I thought there was a lot of work that still needed to be done. I felt like with the censorship stuff in particular, with the torrential downpour, I feel like torrential downpour needed to happen. We needed to have this pushback against the censorship of games that were being localized.
Well, I
And
agree, and I think that's still a problem we're fighting now. And a lot of the the anime community knows about it now, which I'm thankful for. That they're aware of the fact that they have censors that are happening from the localization end. But there is also like legitimate questions about localization. I also have to say, like, there are certain things that localization has issues with. Like, how would you approach certain aspects of anime culture, or even the way it's translated? There are certain problems that I don't know are surmountable, because Japan tends to be a lot more sexually progressive, especially in their art. So, like, how do you handle that, like, outside of Japan, and what do you do? Um, so, I mean, those are interesting questions. I mean, like, there's often a joke about how everyone's always so up in arms about anime, like, oh, this girl is underage. I'm like, pretty much every character and protagonist in anime is underage, because high school is the age that people felt they could be free, which is why so much anime is that age group. And there's a lot of sexualization in anime, so it's like, how do you handle that? I mean, honestly, I don't know. That, to be fair, like, sure, like, people will say, like, translate it straight as possible. But then I'm like, well, if that's the case, like, there's a lot of hentai that will not be brought over. But that's a whole other discussion of localization. I mean, sure, like, we do have a problem with localization, and I don't know, but at the same time, like, I don't know what level of responsibility, and there's a lot of problems, because Japan's culture doesn't necessarily translate over to the United States and the rest of the Western world. So